to A Well-Designed Business. My name is LuAnn, and I'm so glad you found this podcast. Together with my husband Vince and our partner Bill, we have grown our company WindowWorks from the ground up. So I know and I understand the challenges you face in running your interior design business. I also know that your talent alone isn't enough to ensure your success. So on this podcast, we talk about strategies and practical steps to help you grow your business. But make no mistake about it, we have our share of fun here too, mixed in with those aha moments that I love so much. This isn't fluff. Nobody has time for that. Whether you are a new interior designer or a seasoned designer, I am here to help you create and to manage the kind of interior design firm that you dream of. It's straight talk and it's action. Are you ready? Let's get started. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining me for another episode of A Well-Designed Business. It is Design Biz Live Day. I know it's been quite a few months since we have had a Design Biz Live episode. And if you are new to the podcast, the Design Biz Live episodes always feature a discussion between me and my two buddies, Judith Neary and Klassen. And there are quite a few of those in the back catalog of the podcast. The audio versions are available in the podcast queue, whether you're listening in iTunes, iHeart, Stitcher, and then the video versions are always available on my YouTube channel. And so that sort of leads me into how come it's been several months since the last time the three of us have gotten together for our typical shenanigans, because we do have a little bit looser conversation here than I sometimes have on a regularly scheduled episode. But the point of it is that things happen in our lives. We are not just business people. We are not just interior designers. We have things that happen, real life things that happen to us. And some real life things have been happening in the lives of both Judith and Corey. And they asked if we could have a discussion about when things happen to us that affect our business. And Judith is famous for saying it's not all unicorns and roses. And I have to say, if you listened to recently the episode with Wendy Glaister, which aired in December of 2018, it also took a turn down that way, where we understand that we are full rounded human beings that have happiness and joy and sorrow and challenges. And so today we're going to talk about some of the things that happen in our personal life that do affect what happens with us in our business life and in our relationships with our clients in our business life. So having said all that, Judith, do you want to get us started on our conversation today?
Sure, I will. We'll let Captain Kirk join us shortly here.
You can't even see that. Now they can. There, video clipped. Hi, everybody.
Gotta break the ice before we head into it. You know.
I can't believe she did that on air.
I can't believe it. Anybody listening to audio is not even going to understand or have a clue.
But now they have to go to the YouTube channel and see your outfit and see how come Judith keep thinking between the hair, the look, the outfit. He does a little look like Captain Kirk.
Well, yeah. So you can't say Star Trek, because some people will think, oh, this version. No, you have to go back to the original.
No, the original. There's no Star Trek other than the original. Come on.
Well, at least
girls. Like I said before, no Captain Kirk looked this good at 43. So,
well, at least he's not wearing a red shirt, because the red shirts always die in the episodes. So, yeah.
I hadn't noticed that. Is that true?
It's true.
It is true.
And Corey snorted, and
there's
we're off and running. Okay, there's the first one. Well, first of all, LuAnn, thank you, because it's great to join you and Corey again. We actually started this conversation, and the scenario was what we learned last summer.
Yes, so, that's right. What we
just saying, a little late in the game here.
But sometimes it takes a couple of months to learn the lessons and process them, right? So I think it's appropriate.
That, and it's very hard to get scheduled with you, particularly with all your interviews with royalty. So thank you for fitting us in. Really appreciate that. So it did come about as a topic of what I learned last summer, And Corey and I have had some parallel experiences, although our business models are a little different. And so we started talking about that. And what we thought we'd do is maybe break it up, and I would share my topics and then let Corey jump onto his topics. But I need to share with you some stories about you in particular, LuAnn.
About me?
Yes. So I did an evening workshop for the Master Builders Association locally here. And one of the young women that was participating in the workshop came up afterwards, and she said, "Oh my God." She says, "I didn't connect you and Corey." She says, "I listen to LuAnn's podcasts as I drive an hour and a half each way to go to school." And she says, "I was listening to one of your podcasts on the way up here." She's a lovely young woman, working mom. And she says, it's the only thing that's gotten me through and kept me going and kept me inspired in my pursuit of learning this trade. So kudos to you.
Awesome.
And that was really amazing.
That's terrific. That's great.
Yeah, so I mean, you never know who's listening on the back roads of Washington as they're driving to school.
Okay. Exactly.
And I have to tell you another story that was kind of interesting is I go on an initial meeting to some homeowners, and I walk in and I'm like, oh, they're listening to NPR. Okay. And then I hear Corey's voice and I hear Corey snort. And I'm like, oh my God, they're listening to us.
A homeowner?
Yeah. So the homeowner, see, Corey snorted. There we are.
It's not even flipping over to me, and I'm just losing my,
okay. Well, what was interesting is, so I think I have a couple posted on my website. So they went to my website, looked at the interviews, and then were listening to it prior to my arriving.
To get to know you, right?
Well, I don't know. Who knows? But I just found it really interesting that to have that experience, to walk in and to not only hear myself but to hear Corey and realize that they're listening to your podcast. So I encourage you a way. I know we talked about this briefly. I so encourage you to find a way to connect the conversation to homeowners if you can, because they are listening.
Well, that's interesting to know. Who would have thought it? I mean, honestly, I never would have thought. Yeah. Although I can see it in that context, though. If somebody goes to an interior designer that has been featured on the show, and if they put the episode on their website, I mean, it's the perfect way for a homeowner to but to get to know your personality before you even walk through the door. It's the same reason why we encourage interior designers to have video on their website, video content where they talk about their process and, successful projects and befores and afters and little tips for, just giving a homeowner DIY tips, for the thing through video, because that way, once you get through the door, it's like, oh, hi, I know you. Can I just start writing you checks because I feel comfortable with you? So that's awesome. But I wouldn't have thought that a homeowner would have sat through a podcast that isn't talking to them at all. So that's pretty interesting.
Well, my inner dialogue was, oh my God, I hope that I haven't said something inappropriate, right?
Well, yeah, that's always possible.
Oh, so possible. You have no idea.
How about, I mean, you have had a few things that you've said about how to wrangle clients that might not, you really want everybody to know.
That's true. Yeah, that's true. Thank you for reminding me of that.
Oh, that's funny though. So, but that's cool. Very cool.
Well, so I want to talk about what I learned last summer. Okay. And I use your analogy, zone of genius, in so many ways. You have no idea. And I had a couple of scenarios happen this last summer, and they completely derailed me and took me out of my zone of genius. And the first one was we called her Mrs. Bates, like as in Norman Bates's mom. But really what it came down to is we call her Mrs. Hyde. And it was a very simple project, but over the course of the project, the crazy personality manifested itself in a really ugly way. And the contractor and myself did not see it coming and could not have really anticipated it, or it was so unexpected. It really shocked both of us. It took us out of our comfort zone. It was something that we had never come across before. Understand that if someone has that kind of behavior, there's obviously some background issues happening with it. But it was so bizarre, we just didn't even know how to manage it. And so I found that very disconcerting and uncomfortable, because I mean, I've dealt with crazy, but not this level of crazy. And so I started to look at, well, what did I not see, or what did I miss, or what did I not anticipate? And so I started to question my values and my abilities. So that was a pretty big challenge. Also took the contractor way off center, and he's I have notes in front of me so I can focus. So excuse me if I flip paper, but and it really took a while to kind of find a new center and find a spot that said, well, it really wasn't us, okay, it was her, and we did what we could and to manage and still make it a successful project and have a positive outcome. So what happens is it just really kind of crushes your confidence as a designer, and that's very challenging because this is such a personal business for us. I mean, everything is connected to us in a personal way, because it is our creativity that's helping a homeowner to find a solution. So that one really got me sideways.
Can I pick it apart?
Yeah, go for it.
I was going to hope that you would, LuAnn, because I have probably a million things to ask.
Yeah. So the thing is that I just, so everyone knows, I'm not aware of this, as we did not discuss it off air beforehand. So I'm learning this situation that Judith dealt with, as you guys are. A couple of things that occurs to me when you say that it helped, it had you questioning your abilities and your value, and that this was a new level of crazy. So it sounds like this was not one or two conversations or interactions that went downhill. This was sustained over weeks, months. What kind of, and was it a series of irrational conversations? Like, what was the behavior that the client was doing that was creating such,
such chaos?
Yeah,
such chaos.
Chaos. Right.
Well, initially the husband and wife, okay, and then the contractor and myself, my favorite contractor, working through this scenario with the husband and wife. So did our due diligence, went through the whole process like we normally do. During the course of construction, the wife was the primary person at home managing all of it. And the behavior became very happy and engaging one day, and then the next day, different personality. So Jekyll and Hyde personality. And the challenge became for both the contractor and myself is, first of all, how do you manage that type of personality? So you would think that at this point in my professional career, you'd be able to navigate crazy people, right? But this was a different level of problems and how to manage the personality as it would manifest during the course of the project. And so it became very challenging. It's like, oh my God, what are we going to walk into today? Okay. Is she going to be around? Can we get the work done? And so that became, I mean, that would be like, oh man, I really wish I had gone after that psychology degree instead.
Well, and the thing is, I mean, it occurs to me, I'm sure it occurs to you, and maybe you could found out to be true. She probably is suffering from some level of mental illness. Do you not think that's the case? I mean, is that the end up of the whole thing? Is that whether during the process or in hindsight, do you look back and think this is a person that is legitimately struggling with a mental illness?
I do believe that probably not probably. highly likely
Mm-hmm.
that there is some mental illness there. And so it started questioning me. I started questioning myself on how do you handle situations where you have someone, a homeowner, that does have some severe mental instability, emotional instability, might have other things going on in their life that they can't manage, and you just happen to be the target.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So how do you insulate yourself on that? How do you protect yourself? And how do you get out of it? And I don't mean get out of it as like run away, but how do you get to a finish line or to a conclusion so that it just doesn't become a mess?
And do we have any observations in that area?
Well, I'm in fairness, I think I'm still working through it.
Okay.
Because I see the individual in the community. I still have contact with her, and well, I don't have contact with her because I really try and keep about 15 feet between us.
Yeah, right.
But you um, as much as the contractor and I both wanted to run away and just say, you figure it out on your own, we're done, thank you, goodbye, the ethics of first of all, our work ethics and our personal and our professional ethics would not allow us to do that. And secondly, we're in a small community. Okay,
What about the husband? Was the husband on a more level, even keel, and could you have switched some of the, well, of course, if she's in the home every day, you're obviously going to deal with her, but were the decisions then, did you make a conscious decision to at least have decisions run by or okayed by him as well? Like, what was that like?
What was interesting is when the husband was around, the behavior became dramatically different.
Positive or negative?
Positive. And so how do you communicate to a spouse, your wife's a little, we don't want to give her any power tools because we're afraid of her.
Off the rails when you're not here. Yeah.
Yeah, she's off the rails when you're not here. And so how do you, it was a mess, because how do you balance that conversation to not offend or challenge the husband and navigate through it? So what we ended up doing, the contractor and I ended up doing, is just trying to very patiently take care of every single little issue. And even if, however minor or major it became, just like get through it, find the resolution, and then quietly, finish it and get off the radar.
Corey, what were you going to say? I cut you off. You were going to say something.
Well, sorry, I'm just typing. I'm just typing. Typing with a pen.
I know I'm making notes too while we're talking. So
having been in a family situation where mental illness is not talked about, and it is quite severe, I do think that we just as a precautionary kind of disclaimer here, we have to be a little bit careful about the wiki diagnosing or diagnosing through Wikipedia, because it to us it sounds like it, to us as common sense. Well, I should now back up a little bit because common sense is not so common. But it is a delicate situation, and I have witnessed this with a client interaction before with another design professional. It has happened to me as well, not to the point where I needed to terminate the relationship or anything like that, but it was to a point where it had to have a conversation and just like, please just help me understand why these things are happening. And a lot of the times you don't get to that. You're not able to get to that.
Right.
And I think moreover, I think what Judith is really saying in somewhere is that relationships are delicate as they are, but client to professional relationships are even more delicate because they're subject to expectations based upon barter and trade, right? So you're going to do this for this, and a lot of those expectations can be misunderstood. So in my experience, I have found that when an expectation is misunderstood, we need to clarify, all right, let's talk about what that was with the client. And yeah, you have to be courageous, and it's really, really hard. And sometimes you don't get that opportunity to be courageous because it's so beyond you, which led me to write this down. And it seems to be a theme that I seem to be running through a lot lately. This is a them issue, not a you issue. So it is, yes, in our nature, we want to be helpful. In our nature, we want to be creative. In our nature, we want to help our clients achieve their goals. That is at the core of what we do. But in our nature, we can't be everything to everybody, right? So yeah, Judith, your scope of services expanded there.
Includes psychiatry. Yeah. So, but here's the thing, not to gloss over the beginning that you said that, you have experience with mental illness and to be careful of the Wikipedia diagnosis. My purposes in asking, did you suspect that there was ultimately and truly a mental illness at play there, was not to actually put a label on what it might be, to make a guess whether it was depression or bipolar or whatever else it is, but to just actually, in my mind, to be able to, if you come to that opinion, then it automatically becomes this is a them issue and not a you issue. And that was my reason for asking you, Judith, do you ultimately, either in the process of it or in hindsight, actually believe that this person is unfortunately suffering from mental illness? Because if you do come to that conclusion, then that to me is the first step of understanding that it should not rock yourself as far as your abilities and your value are concerned. Now, you want to look back in hindsight and evaluate how you managed dealing with somebody with these challenges. You want to look back in hindsight and evaluate yourself and see, how did you manage the conversations in real time when it wasn't good, and what wasn't a high as opposed to a low, a good day or as opposed to a bad day. That I can understand, but it troubles me and hurts my heart to know that this experience rocked your confidence, because it is a them issue. Now, it's a you issue in the things that I said. And that's why we are having this conversation on this podcast, because every single one of us, if it hasn't happened yet, is going to do business with somebody that is suffering from mental illness, hands up. And so, and the thing is that until you have experienced it in your own world or personal world, whether it's a family member, a friend, or whatever, you don't really recognize it. You really do just think the person is like nuts in a flip way. You just like, they're crazy pants in a flip way. But once you have met and interacted or had someone close to you that has gone through it with somebody in their world, then you understand, oh, those are markers. Oh, that's a real thing. That's actually seems just like my, brother-in-law's sister. Do you know what I mean? Like, whoa. And speaking for myself and for my team at WindowWorks, we definitely have particularly 2 clients that I can think of that we have long-term, many year relationships with, and that have ordered over and over and over, that we know for a fact that suffer from mental illness. And it is disconcerting, because one day you are the cat's meow, and the next day, actually, I'm just going to think about it, there's a third one that I can think of, and you are legitimately, truly walking on water on Monday, and on Tuesday it's just, how could you do this and why did you do that? And when you first are in this boat, the very first time that client who has been somehow buttoned up every time in your presence and they flip to the other side, you're just like, wait, what did we do? What happened? I mean, everything. But then once it happens the second and the third and the fourth and the fifth time through the process, if you're evaluating and saying, we're showing up on time, we're doing what we said we were supposed to do, we're keeping in contact, we are still providing good service, then you start to say, this is a them, not a me. Mm-hmm. And you still have to handle it. It's still your responsibility as a business owner to handle it with professionalism and with integrity and with kid gloves.
Grace.
Right.
With a little grace.
Well, thank you, LuAnn. That just took care of my next 10 therapy sessions that I had scheduled. I'm going to cancel those now. But you summarized it beautifully. And in reflecting on this particular situation, there was a couple of things that I needed to do kind of a self check-in on. One is, again, it's a them, it's not a you. And initially, you may take the hit personally just because being a designer and being a creative, you function at a different sensitivity level than, say, other people. Okay.
People who are not designers.
Right. Non-creative types. God forbid they're out there. Okay. And so you take the initial hit personally, and then you have to sort it out. The other thing that had to kind of click into my brain at some point is, I'm going to go back to conflict management. How do you manage conflict? How do you negotiate conflict? And I thought to myself, I really need to go to police academy and learn how to diffuse situations.
Hostage negotiator.
Yeah, hostage negotiation. Because seriously, as a designer, I felt like I was a hostage.
Yes, I've had that situation as well.
That should be a whole nother podcast. Okay, I'm going to write that down. Hostage negotiation. So again, going back to my zone of genius, I want to say this. It caught me off guard, and I did not feel like I owned my zone. Okay, so really important to own your zone and find a way to own your zone and insulate yourself against that kind of situation. Because you're right. There's crazy pants out there.
So Judith, this was the first time in your career that you found yourself in business with somebody that we don't know for a fact, but we see, to me, by saying that is possibly suffering mental illness gives the grace to that person and to excuse the behavior, because otherwise then we have to assume that they're just a jerk. And so to me, when I just want people to understand, I'm not making light of mental illness by doing this. That's my out for that person, because somebody that is that unpredictable, when you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, there's only really a few options there. So I really don't want letters on this, and I don't want people telling me I need training on mental illness. I'm actually just saying, if we, for the purposes of our conversation, give the benefit of the doubt that the person wasn't just waking up in the morning and trying to be the worst person on the planet, but that person was potentially or possibly struggling with either, and it doesn't even have to be full-blown mental illness. It could be just a crisis in their personal life that was making them uneven keel for the period of time that you were working with them. So that's the disclaimer. Okay. And if anybody's, can't get that, then I don't know what to say.
And in fairness, so part of this conversation, and when I get through the rest of these, is, she obviously has something going on. Now, whether it's a temporary back end situation that she wasn't dealing with, and I'm going to talk about a bucket here in a minute, whether her bucket was overly full and it just tipped out, and I just happened to be in the splash zone along with the contractor. I mean, I don't know the backstory.
A lot of reasons that could push somebody to irrational behavior.
Wait, we live in the United States. There's a definition of insanity right there for you. Okay, so who knows?
Sorry about it. Sorry.
I had.
Sorry. Can I ask you a question or two, Judith? Because I think we can all draw a little parallel from this. Is that sometimes there are some behaviors which can lend to a tipping point in a situation with a client that can actually be a little bit more dramatic, and we have to kind of step in and be in control, or we kind of have to tell them what they're doing sometimes. Were you getting like 2 a.m., 4 a.m. emails and text messages and stuff like that with
No,
this?
no.
So
just the behavior in person.
Mm-hmm.
so that, I mean, to me, that's usually one trigger that something's going to go, right? Or something's going to unhinge.
Right.
And then, so they were different in person with another person, with their other person with them,
Correct.
right?
Correct. With the spouse involved, the behavior was different. So.
And was the written communication different than the in-person communication? Was it like a totally different tone
Um, I.
or
The,
non-existent kind of a thing?
Yeah, I find I don't get a lot of written communication when
Yeah.
somebody is
Yeah, there isn't. It's just really was an
it's all
in-person.
picking
Yeah.
up the phone, and it's
Right.
in person.
Right.
It's getting
Right.
it out with no filter.
Right.
So what I'm finding sometimes is there's a lot of and this is something to be aware of, is that sometimes I have found that this can be a different markation of how age and technology have kind of worked their way out with our different generations, in that sometimes with a younger generation than myself, that the text or written communication will be one tone, and the in-person communication will be completely despondent, like not there. So I have found those things as well. So I was just curious to know if that was an identifier
Well,
or an unhinge here or something. I don't know what to call it. So
A marker.
yeah, a marker. Yeah. No, I don't think so. And I think, well, two things. This is, like you said, LuAnn, this is a really jello topic, because it's just, there's no kind of hard start and stop to it. There's no answer to it.
And
There's
by
no
the way, none
solution
of us
to it.
are actually mental health professionals, so
no.
there's that aspect.
This is true. There is that.
You know, we're really
But we
just
can,
sharing our experiences.
yeah.
But what I found, I think the overarching thing I want to kind of summarize on this is that the challenge was, a reality check for myself to not, how do I filter? How do I not absorb it? Okay. And then internalize it and make it my problem. The other thing that came out of this for me was, how do I deal with conflict management and communication and find a way to navigate the behavior, okay, in a successful way that still allows me to function and allows me to move forward and not carry the baggage of that experience with me. Very hard to do.
That is
Can I?
so hard.
Okay,
So
so I have to ask you guys that. Like, I really need you to help me understand why and how you felt the responsibility of absorbing that and carrying it with you. Here's what I want to say. I understand needing to find the ability for managing it, for still producing the project under the conditions that you are the professional, and that it is up to us as the professional to not go down and engage in a non-productive level or place. Okay. But I'm really not understanding, Judith. What are you saying? You're saying that after an engagement with the client that was negative, and probably levels of negative, we're not talking about, hey, this wasn't pleasant. We're probably talking 8, 9, 10 level unpleasant, negative situation.
Mm-hmm.
What happened? What you walk out the door and it affected you in a way that you thought did you bring it on? Did you think that you deserved it? What was the thing that you struggled with trying not to absorb, as opposed to, I won't answer. Go ahead, tell me.
Okay, so again, going back to being a creative, all right, and that as a creative, you you might perceive the world differently. You might engage the world differently. You might have sensitivities to the world differently. As a creative person, not saying that non-creatives are immune and not sensitive types, but what happens is when you engage with a homeowner, even though it's a business relationship, for me in the small community, it becomes a personal relationship. Cannot avoid it.
Right.
I just, okay, I can't avoid it. I'm in the center of town. You know, I mean, most of my business comes from taking showers with women at the gym, you know, so after water aerobics, I can't help it. It's a very personal relationship. I don't know that I could function in a non-personal relationship in this type of business. And so even though you as a design professional, you're managing the business and being a pro about it, there is a point that you have engagement with the homeowner on a very personal level. And so when this situation transpired, even though my inner dialogue is she has issues, they're not yours, it took me a while to clear out the baggage. I mean, let's face it, I didn't go to a sweat lodge. I didn't roll in mud. I didn't get smudged with sage, and call out the curandero to get the peyote healing in the desert. Pretty close, though. Wanted to go there.
So,
I
but
think,
go ahead.
sorry, I think what and having gone through my own journey over the last couple months, I think what you're talking about and is more of a cathartic experience for a lot of us. And I don't want to paint a picture of delicate designers or delicate creatives that are so sensitive and they can't do anything and all they want to do is be happy, happy, happy. I don't want to paint that picture. What I do want to say is that the nature of our business can be intensely personal. And there are a lot of times where we are designing a solution that is a marriage saver. We may be designing a solution that is a ability saver. And it does take a certain kind of person to do our jobs well. And I think that what you are experiencing, Judith, is not uncommon, and it's going to happen again. Every experience is going to be different, and I can't tell you. You're talking about it, and my list is going like there must be 100 things in the last 2 years that have happened to me, very much like this, that sent me over a personal deep end where I just shut the door, closed the door, didn't want to talk to anybody, and I just sat there for 3-4 hours just trying to figure it out. Because I need to be able to be a business owner. I need to be able to be a boss. I need to be able to call suppliers. I need to be able to interact with other clients. And I don't know if there's a right way for all of this. I don't know.
I want to say that I'm going to push you back a little bit. Again, not a psychiatrist, not a psychologist. But I do not personally ascribe to that it's a difficult or a more difficult situation as a creative.
You're probably right.
Right.
I'm totally going to give you that. It's how we own it.
I think what it is that there is something in each of us that reacts to everything that happens to us in our own personal way. And Judith, maybe the dialogue that you have used for yourself is, I am a creative and therefore these things are true about me. And that's your personal dialogue. But when we talk about the word creative has a meaning, I'm a creative. I'm not an interior designer, but I'm highly creative person. And it comes out in different ways. It comes out in marketing ideas. It comes out in, designing window treatments. It comes out in a different way than an interior designer expresses it. But I own the fact that I am highly creative. That is not how I would process that situation. And so what I'm saying and pushing back a little bit is that I agree that this is an extremely important conversation, because as business people, we're all going to be in it at some point. The three of us here have been in it. Like I said, off the top of my head, I could think of 3 clients, and I'm sure if I sat quietly, there would be others. Here's where I do think it is more challenging for an interior designer in this situation. Just like everything that an interior designer does, that is more challenging than what a lot of us do for a living, that your engagement with that client goes on for so long. You see? So even the 3 clients that I'm thinking of, when the phone rings, and it's one of them, the phone rings on a good day. They're always having a good day when the phone rings. And so, we know now the behavior up and down, and the Jekyll and Hyde, that the struggle that they have with their life and their personality. And so we're mentally prepared. But even when I engage with that client, depending on what they order from me, it's a 3 to an 8 week engagement. If they're ordering blinds, I'm going to go measure, or I'm going to order them, and they're going to be installed in 3 weeks, and goodbye, see ya. And we could really get through that whole engagement with no lows, only highs, right? It happens. But with you guys, you are engaged for many months, sometimes years, on a project. And I also don't need contact every day or every week in order to produce what I produce for my client. You need contact, probably sometimes multiple touch points in a week, as you expressed, going over with the contractor. And so I think that's where it gets way more difficult for an interior design professional when they find themselves in business with a client whose behavior is erratic for whatever reasons for them, that it's erratic, and that's what it is. So, but moving past when you said the layers, that it was your community, that's how your business functions, because it's such a small community. And we remind everybody, it's 10,000 people on this island that you are on, right? So Vashon, maybe we should.
It's okay.
But the thing is, what I want to peel back on that for you, and with you, I mean, is what was it about the fact that it's a small community, Judith? Was it that when you would come from a negative experience, interaction, that you took with you and that you absorbed, and you had a hard time processing it? What was it in relation to the community that made it more difficult? Was it that you might run into the person and that you didn't want to? Or was it that you thought that it would be known in your community, that it could be that the person sitting next to you in the Aquata class heard that this woman was this way, and maybe somebody would say that you hadn't handled it well? Like, what part of it that was rocking you, that was giving you that shake of your confidence?
Well, I don't know now. Thanks.
Okay. Because I need you to get to that, because if you can't get to that, then I think you're going to have a hard time doing that. This is a them issue and not me issue. Because if it's a black and white issue, Judith, black and white, no layers of compassion, no layers of personality, no layers of anything that we need to always be cognizant of. But when we just strip it to completely logic, that was a really horrible interaction. I have the utmost pain in my heart for this client that lives with this irrationality in their daily life. And I walk out the door and I say, thanks, sweet Jesus, that my brain works normally. Like, that's the cut and dry of it. But you're not experiencing that. So why are you not experiencing that?
Well,
yeah.
God, LuAnn, can we take a break?
Well, you're getting a little LuAnn one-on-one coaching now. This is my zone of genius. It's the mindset. I don't pretend to be a psychologist or psychiatrist, but I am very, very good at trying to get you to be real with you.
Okay, so I got a question. How are your kids doing?
Yeah. They know who to call when they have a problem.
I guess so.
Oh,
Okay.
apparently.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, let me try and sort of wrap the topic together, because what you're asking me kind of relates to the rest of the topics I wanted to bring out.
Okay, good.
So yes, it's a black and white issue, but at the same time, my personal challenge is to not carry that baggage with me. In other words, not take ownership of their issue, okay, as in her issue, and not carry that baggage with me. And that's, you know what, that takes a little bit of time to kind of learn that skill. And as long as
I think it's just in your heart. It's just your heart and your nature to take that pain of somebody's away with you.
And you know, you do have to dispose of it, because you can't carry it on. Okay. Now, when I see her in the community, she is clearly uncomfortable with me.
Because she's been exposed.
I haven't exposed her. I haven't
but she feels like it. She knows that she's been exposed. In other words, she's exposed herself and she's vulnerable now.
Right. And so, you know, at some point she might get to a spot where she can at least say hi to me, and I'm okay with that, you know, but I'm not going to make her feel worse.
Right.
For what she was going through. Okay. So might take a year, might come around. My experience is that this does tend to come back around eventually. You just got to wait it out. Okay. So, so I do wish her the best of luck. I hope that they have found, not peace, but I hope that they're enjoying their home. Okay. But I want to go on to the other topic, and if we have to take a break and start up again, we can. I'm fine with doing that, because it is a very deep topic for all of us. And thank you for LuAnn for being so in my face about it.
Well, and I want to clarify something, because you just said, you know that it's, it's a black and white issue, but blah, blah, blah. And I really have to make this very clear. When I was using that analogy, I was actually, my message is that it is not a black and white issue. It is an issue with all the layers of the humanity and the sensitivity and everything, but as a mechanism, as a self-preservation mechanism to possibly strip it down to its black and white. That's really like to strip it to its logic. So I know there is one part of it that's black and white, because not only does it have all the layers of that own individual client and the trauma and the drama and the layers of feelings that they have. Every person, all three of us are different. We would all three work and interact with her differently. So there's nothing black and white about it, but I just feel like that it's a worthwhile endeavor mentally for self-preservation, to try and strip it to black and white, which is, it's a them issue, not a me issue. And you have to then layer in your compassion in order to deal with it. And you have to layer in yourself as a human being and the way you process in order to manage the project. But that moment of self-preservation is rooted in, this is, I'm not doing this. I'm not making this happen. I'm not creating this issue. I did not. This is not me being a bad business person. This is not me being a bad person. This is not me being a bad designer creating this drama. This is existing here in this individual. Right? Make sense?
Correct. Okay. Now let me move on to my next topic. The analogy I have that I want to use, and I want to kind of come back to it, is water, a drip in a bucket. Okay, size of your bucket, how much water you can hold, how many drips before that bucket tips over. There's probably some other brilliant analogy out there, but that's all I can think about, because I have horses and I have dripping buckets. Okay, so that's what it is. And for the first time in my professional career, I fired a client. And I have never had that experience. Now, my business here on the island, I've had for 5 years, and so I really associate it. For the first time in my business here, I fired a client. And I think there's two things that happened kind of simultaneously. There is a planet that left our universe and created this out of balance psychotic behavior for almost 5 months over this last summer into fall. I joke about it with Corey, but it's like, screw Mercury retrograde. I mean, I think Mars has imploded into the face of the sun and we just don't know it.
Some foreign planet black hole thing.
I was like, what is everybody drinking? Okay.
And just to be clear, we're not talking about the client we were previously talking about.
No,
we're talking about a new situation now. This is another a new client, a new problem that you experienced this summer. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. And I don't want to spend too much time talking about the specific points that transpired, but ultimately it came to a point that I'm like, this just is not working for me. And I'm ethically compromised. I am personally compromised, and I'm becoming professionally compromised. So it took me a long time to get to that point. And when I terminated the relationship, I did it in an email and in a letter, and it was respectful, and made sure that if there were lingering things that really would have created a problem in the project not proceeding forward, I at least provided the information and the resources so that it could proceed forward. And ultimately, not a homeowner, was a different type of project. Ultimately, the gentleman finally asked me, said he didn't understand why, and he wanted to have a phone conversation. And it took me about a week to kind of not go Judith on him. In other words, not be all pissed off and get out my 2x4 and want to smack him upside the head, right?
You need the cooling off period.
Yeah. And when we finally did have the conversation, he called me from his car. And I was like, oh, my inner dialogue is, you couldn't have even pulled off the side of the road and just picked up the phone. So he's driving, he's distracted, and he's trying to have a conversation with me. And I'm like, I made the right decision. My inner dialogue is, I made the right decision.
Mm-hmm.
And
but
then
that was another layer of disrespect in your mind that
it was
have
just
a serious
like,
conversation distracted.
Yeah. I'm like, come on. I mean, anyways. And so he asked me, he said, why? And I'm like, oh, okay, I'm gonna turn this one around. And I asked him, I said, why do you think I fired you and I terminated the relationship? And really, I don't like to say fired. I said, why do you think I terminated the relationship? And he says, I don't have any idea. And I go, therein lies the problem. And it was very challenging for me because it was a behavior issue. And I'm like, I'm sorry. It was a series of things. And I did not have the mental bandwidth or the emotional bandwidth to go into the weeds and say, you did this, 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 and do all the finger pointing. I won't do finger pointing, and I won't do arguing. And it was very challenging because this gentleman had additional connections for me and additional projects that were community related. So they had a personal investment. But I realized if I'm having a problem at this point in time, I can't even imagine what it's going to get like, what it's going to be like farther down the path. Mm-hmm. And in this process between Mrs. Hyde and this situation, I realized that my bucket just too much. And I had to dump my bucket because my capacity to manage just got, I was like, done. I'm done, cut, done, can't do it.
Close sign on.
So
yes,
I have a question. Now looking back, how does that make you feel that you made that decision?
Oh, God, LuAnn. Oh, wait, that's you, Corey.
I'm
Me,
writing my
Captain
notes
Kirk.
for the questions I had for you. I'm like,
So the reason why I'm asking is because I think if we were to kind of omit the period of us, we all do this. If we omit the period of going through the motions and organizing our brain and putting things in the right categories and coming to our own understanding of what that situation is, how do you feel about it now?
Well, I actually thank you both for this, but I actually have come to the conclusion because in hindsight, because of course you do this, the shoulda, woulda, couldas, okay,
Mm-hmm.
and your mind rabbits down that hole. Okay, can't help it, just rabbits down that hole. And this is where I'm like, okay, it's not all rainbows and unicorns. I know you said roses, LuAnn, but I live in a tie-dye community, so it's rainbows. And it's really what it is thunderstorms and chickens. Okay. It's really my analogy is it's thunderstorms and chickens. It's like, how do you navigate this? Chasing chickens and thunderstorms and general chaos. But to answer your question, Corey, in hindsight, after doing the shoulda, woulda, couldas, and second guessing myself, what I realized is I have respect for myself and that this individual really crossed the line with me. And if I had continued it, it would not have been a positive outcome, nor would it have been a productive, healthy, professional relationship to be in. So I have respect for myself that
And
I did it.
I think that's amazing because you stood in your space. You stood in your zone of genius and you decided what the outcome was going to be.
I actually got to own my zone.
that's right.
Mm-hmm.
That's right.
But I know, LuAnn, you're dying to say something, but I want to share something real here that's kind of an interesting analogy is, and I'm sorry, I'm looking for my notes about it. This process of my bucket becoming too full. There's this, you talk about passive and aggressive, and then somewhere in the middle is assertiveness, right? And what happened for me is between these different challenges of these kind of bizarre projects that came my way is the dripping of my bucket got really full. And instead of emptying the bucket before it overflowed, I wasn't paying attention and I let it overflow because I just done, can't take it anymore. Yeah. Cut it off.
That's how accidents happen.
Right. And so what I think the challenge is is professionals is how do we not let that bucket get so full? I mean, let's face it, we're in a pretty chaotic environment in our world these days. I don't listen to the news. I can't deal with it. I'm sorry, I'm not on Instagram. I can't deal with it. The time that I have, I try and focus on other endeavors to provide balance. And so I really think the thing here that I want to talk about is if it's not rainbows and unicorns, or if it's not unicorns and roses, and it's really thunderstorms and chickens, how do you find a way to find balance? And then that's a big challenge.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I think you're talking about probably mindfulness even. And, we can talk about the whole Zen movement and how we're in the age of the data dump, which both happening at the same time is just a testament to humanity sometimes. I think what it is you have to you have to be able to sit comfortably no matter where you are and find that space. And I'll admit, if I'm driving down, if anybody lives in the Vancouver area, bike lanes. I mean, they're everywhere, which is a good thing as a cyclist, but it's kind of, it screws everything up otherwise because our patterns are ingrained. So I think what we're talking about is we've learned these behavioral outcomes of if it's this and this and this, therefore it's this. But we're at this point where there's dynamic shifts in the types of clients that we have, the types of businesses we have to operate, the types of services we need to provide. And I don't think there's ever one clear direction or one clear answer for all of it. But the heart of it is you need to take ownership of you. That it sounds completely selfish, unfortunately, but you have to take ownership of you and your outcome, but find a way to connect with somebody else. Man, I need to stop talking because feel like I'm some sort of imitation guru today.
No. I mean,
Yes, Captain Kirk.
Yeah. I do have a few things that I want to say on it, though. So the first thing is that I want to go back to your conversation, Judith, when you said that how you terminated the relationship. I want to recap that because I think that that's great. There's some great tips in there for designers who may be experiencing a situation where they are hearing their inner voice tell them it's time to terminate a client. Okay. First thing that I want to say is, even before we reach the level of wanting to terminate, I think that should be at least said out loud that we often in the interior design industry talk about the personal level that we have with our clients, right? That we're in their homes, we're in their bedrooms, and they become like our friends. And even we use the word terminate the relationship. I think that there is something to be said for always remembering that it is a business transaction and for always conducting yourself towards that ideal. So you can be friendly and you can be, okay, and your kid has a birthday party and I remember it and I can say something about it. But it is when you drop the veil of that business relationship and you yourself engage in it as a friend as opposed to a professional. So I'm not suggesting that that's what you did at all. I'm giving advice for the baby designers out there that are listening and need to understand, well, how the heck do I avoid this, right? So believe me, I'm not suggesting, I'm hoping to be teaching right now. And so the thing is that no matter how friendly, no matter how warm, no matter how many pairs of their BVDs that you looked at in their underwear drawer in the course of doing the work with them, you are in a professional relationship with them. And so to keep that in mind, and there is a way and a level that you need to strive for that is warm and engaging and friendly, but still maintains that distinction of a business transaction. That's number one. Number two, I like that you terminated the business transaction in email and writing. Very professional. It makes it clear. There's no, well, I left you a voicemail or I texted you. That's a grown-up who's handling a business transaction. So that's a huge tip right there. I also love that you provided them with all of the information they needed to pick the project up on their own or with someone else, that there was no non-professional behavior of tit for tat, or you don't get this or you don't get that. These are the things that you paid for. These are the lists of the products and services that you already, contracted me and I've already delivered, and here's your list. So yay, yay, yay. I also love that when he wanted the telephone call, that you took a break. That you didn't just say, okay, I'll have it today. I'm, crazy pants angry at you and I'm still going to have it today. That you waited until you could leave the stick behind. I've done the same thing myself. It's like, they'll say to me, oh, you didn't call that person back. I'm like, not yet, because I don't have normal LuAnn voice yet. We need to wait till LuAnn can be normal LuAnn voice. And because the thing about it is that when we are upset, whether we're upset at our spouse, or we're upset at our child, or we're upset with our client, our tone and our intonation, the breaths that we take, the pauses that we take, they are so much louder than the words we choose to use. Okay. So if you are saying all the proper professional things, but you're really pissy, hot, mad still, I'm sorry, they're getting that message. Okay, so that's great as a business owner, and I appreciate that. And I want to make sure that the younger baby designers listening picked up these juicy, actionable things from you, Judith. The other thing that I want to say is that you know, you said, what happens when our bucket becomes too full? You know, what does happen? And the step before that, how do we not get it too full? For this, it's going to be personal, my opinion, that it's going to be personal for every individual, how they, as a business owner, do not get a full bucket. I also believe, having been in business almost 4 decades, that mechanism for not having a full bucket will change over the seasons of your life. Okay.
Yes.
So if you're a young person in business with 2 or 3 kids, maybe one of the best mechanisms for your bucket not being full is that you have you have every day at 3 o'clock, you're the one that picks up your smiling little children's faces from school, and you go for a walk, you walk home from school. Like, just that de-stressor, that, you know what, this is a really crazy, horrible conversation with this contractor, this client, but at 3 o'clock, I'm going to be with my babies. You know what I mean? For me, at this stage of my life, my thing is the Vincenz and I, we have dinner every Friday and Saturday night. And unless 5 times a year there is something happening with one of our grown kids, or an event or something that we really must be at, but it's pretty non-negotiable that if there's going to be a bar stool that we're going to be sitting next to each other on. And if for us, it is the bar stool, because I don't want to even be across the table from them on Friday night. I want to be next to them. And if ever there's this one restaurant in town, and sometimes we don't get to in time to get to the bar stool. And when we sit at the table, we're that weird people that sit on the same side of the table. Like, that's us. And now Thursday night, we're going to sit across the table. But Friday night, we're sitting next to each other, because that is just become legitimately, it's actually a mechanism for us now. It is actually a switch. I don't cook anymore. You guys know that, right? Those days are done. Kids are out of the house. I don't need to do it. So we're going to go out to dinner on Tuesday too. We're probably going to go out to dinner on Monday and Wednesday and Thursday and Saturday and Sunday too. But what I'm saying is, it's legit when I tell you that when we're at dinner on Tuesday night, if there's a restaurant, we're going to be across the table. But on Friday night, it's next to, and it's like this little, like I always say, if you give the mouse a cookie, then you want to knack him. If you sit next to me at a bar stool on Friday night, then I'm going to unwind, and I'm going to smile, and I'm going to laugh, and it's going to be different. And even though I'm going to get up and work on Saturday, it's going to be different. On Tuesday, we're in business mode. What happened at WindowWorks today? And how did it all go? And we have to solve problems. We have employees that need us tomorrow morning. But Friday, there's a switch that flips. And so that's the thing. What are some things, do you guys have ideas, or, for not getting the bucket full, right? It's going for a walk, going for a run. Maybe, I don't know what it is. You have to figure it out, but your message is that you must figure it out for yourself. And I prefer that it is a weekly thing, because that, if it happens weekly, maybe the bucket only gets half full. The craziest crap can happen. If I told you legitimately the week that WindowWorks had last week, my husband was in a nut. I mean, everybody's panties were in a bunch, because, oh my God, it was like every day something crazy happened. But we're not going to wait 5 weeks to digest this. We're not going to wait 5 weeks to process it. We are going to only have to wait 7 days, and then we're going to be together again, and we're going to diffuse it, and by the second glass of wine, it's like, and who cares about WindowWorks anyway? You know what I mean, right?
I think I've developed oh, sorry, million things happened. When I first started my business, I took meetings at every single time of the day. It didn't matter. I did gung ho. I needed to go. I remember an example of me driving down the highway at 9:30 at night, hadn't had dinner. Probably the last thing I ate was probably around 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Traffic was bumper to bumper on 9:30 on a Wednesday night. Maybe a hockey game or football game. I don't know what these things are. It just got out or whatever. And I'm going the opposite direction of traffic. And I remember sitting there in the car going, I'm exhausted from this day. Because not only did I have to deal with the 8 a.m. start with the phone ringing from contractors, I have to go right through till 9:30 p.m. Our brains are not designed to do that. They're not. So what it took me some time to develop this, but I switched from business hours to appointment hours. Right? Smart idea. Because I'm smart sometimes. Just a little. And I take appointments within times that I know I can be productive.
Mm-hmm.
I know I can be productive. I am not productive at 6:00 p.m. I am not. I'm hungry. I'm probably hangry more than anything.
Right.
That is not a good time for me to be making decisions. Or presenting ideas. It's just not. So I came up with some pretty stringent, I would say more restrictive rules. And what I realized is that clients don't really care. If you're good, they'll work with you.
That's right.
They will.
It's your business. You're in
That's right.
charge.
And what I discovered is I have a optimal period, and now I take appointments between 10 and 4. That's it. That's
Okay,
what
so I want to make that distinction. What you're telling us is your business hours might be between 8 and 6, but appointment hours are between 10 and 4, because
That's right.
you have looked in the mirror and understood that's when you are most likely to give your best to your client.
Correct. And those appointments are Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Because Monday's a gong show. It always is. And Friday, no one wants to meet on a Friday.
Right. Well,
anyway.
you don't, especially.
No,
That's all that matters.
Right. Because if I'm working Monday from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m., Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, I definitely want to do 10 to 2 on a Friday.
Mm-hmm.
And make my time to go to yoga, make my time to get to sit in a sauna and relax and unwind. And then I want to make time to actually make dinner at home in my kitchen with someone.
That's nice. So these are the things that you are talking about that are things that help you not get your bucket full. So
Absolutely.
I love it. Now let's talk about, go ahead. I wanted to, go ahead.
Oh, no, go ahead.
And it also is about weekends too. No. I made this rule 4 years ago. No weekend appointments. And wouldn't you know it, the one time I did a weekend appointment, everything broke down. I couldn't get laundry done.
Which apparently is why you're wearing that sweater and shirt today.
Oh, and that. Couldn't get laundry done. Couldn't get my Costco run in to get my meat and bread. Right, that's all I buy there anyway.
So you didn't feel ready for the week because the weekend was messed up.
Now it was a 2-week interval where it took me to get balanced back. So yes, work-life balance, bucket full, being understanding of when that bucket's getting high, and making, there are high periods in your life, but you need to manage when that bucket's getting full. And it's super hard, but we're just as flawed as any other client is. So
right.
Right.
No, we're human beings. That's the bottom line. And so what I wanted to say is, so now we talked about how it's a personal discovery process to figure out how you are going to avoid having your own personal bucket get full. And for all of us, it's different. It could be quiet reading. It could be whatever. I don't know. It doesn't matter. But to identify it for you. Then we need to have a few minutes on strategies for when the bucket has already gotten full, because as human beings, it happens to all of us and to each of us. We've missed our markers and we've missed our mechanisms for getting to a full bucket. And then the one client looks at us, sideways, and looks at us upside down, and boom, we're fried. So what do you think about that for ideas on managing that splash?
I think we need to take a note from our clients and hire professionals to help us. Sorry.
Well, let me come back, wrap this around a little bit, because we just did 2 podcasts in one.
I know. I was just thinking that too. We should have actually stopped. I might have to edit and stop them.
That probably not a bad idea to pick up on part 2 somewhere. I'm gonna try and wrap this in a way that gives you some closure, or at least be able to pick up on a second segment on this. But I had 2 designers contact me who had been in one of my NKBA prep classes, and they are talking about trying to start their own business. And I'm like, well, you've been listening to LuAnn's podcast? And they're like, no. So I said, hooked them up straight out with that. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
One of the things that so I said, do you guys just want to have a conversation one day and let's just talk a little bit? And so we talked, and one of the things that their biggest challenge was fear. And so their first step in overcoming their fear was to call me. And because they had a connection with me from being in the class, and so there was at least some personalized connection. And so we went through a kind of a whole list of things, and I gave them some challenges, and I said, these are the things you need to listen to on LuAnn's podcast, and I said, we can have a conversation again. But one of the things I told them is, I said, you need to get involved with a nonprofit. And they said, well, why? And I said, well, first of all, you will be surprised at the connections that it will provide you, for first of all, for business, okay? But second of all, most importantly, is it gives you an opportunity to step outside yourself and contribute beyond, you know, our day-to-day lives. And I said, you know, charities involving pets, charities involving children, I mean, those are go-tos for a lot of people, but find something that you're interested in that aligns either to your community, to some life experience, to something that you're interested in. Maybe it's on your bucket list of things that you would like to do or be part of, and not just attend a quarterly meeting or a quarterly event or donate money, but actually get engaged and do something either on a weekly or a bi-weekly basis. Because at some point you have to understand in your professional career, and this is the really hard part about designers, particularly younger designers, because it's all about them, okay? But then there's a point in your career that you learn it's not all about you. It's about taking care of your client, living vicariously through your client, or contributing to something to a bigger picture. And they were really quite stunned by this, but they were like, well, you know, that's probably a good idea. And I said, the other thing is it will help you gain confidence in making connections, in making and contributing to causes that are outside of yourself. So that became kind of an interesting dynamic. And then it also goes back to Corey and I, if you remember 260 podcasts ago, the conversation where we talked about psychographics, where your clients are aligned to, not based on demographics, but onto your values in life. And so for me, having a client that aligns to my psychographic, that client also has to be contributory. Excuse me, that's not a word. Needs to it is in my world, but contributes to the community in a larger scale. So it's just not all about themselves. And so those personal connections really, and through community service in whatever capacity it is. And I'm not talking about, God love the people in Africa that need clean water. There's shit going on in your own backyard that needs to be dealt with. Okay.
That's right.
And that's really valuable. So for me, that's how I empty my bucket, is I step aside from this and I go do nonprofit work. And that's what
nice.
Saves me. That's
nice.
what gives me perspective.
That's nice.
That's
a great mechanism.
It's
a lot more noteworthy and more helpful to the universe to do that than to go to the bar every Friday night with my husband, I have to say.
Well, actually, you didn't let me finish, but I was going to say that and the martinis that my husband and I have on the porch.
Okay, see, there you go.
You got to balance it
That's
out.
That's it, right. A little of this, a little of that.
I've had a couple of those martinis, and as the Canadian with the smaller ounce, you're definitely not driving anywhere anytime soon.
That's it. Oh man. All right. So this was a bear of a topic. It was actually two topics that we rolled into this show. I think, one last thing that I want to say, other than thank you to you, Judith, for sharing so much of what happened to you last summer. That was, it shook you, and with good reason. I mean, there was a lot of significant things between these two clients that was difficult to handle, and it's very brave of you to share it with everybody, because we all know that we've been there, but we don't all talk about it. So, hats off to you for being willing to do that, and I thank you for it. And it reminds me so many of the things that we talked about here, and so many lessons as far as strategies for helping to avoid this. Corey, you mentioned signs for looking for signs that maybe you are engaged with a client who may just be having a full bucket, or may be having challenges, temporary or permanent, but is their behavior one way different in communication as opposed to writing? Is their behavior different with a partner or a spouse around, like your client was, Judith, one way or another? Are they all of a sudden, communicating at 2 o'clock and 3 o'clock in the morning, like you mentioned, Corey? So the point is that to not ignore the signs, and to have your own mechanisms for dealing with your own issues that come up from it, so that you don't exacerbate the situation by combining two worlds of issues, right? And then I just want to say that the one final thing is that I say this all the time, and everybody at WindowWorks knows I live by this, is, you cannot change somebody else. You can only change your reaction to them, but you actually can change your reaction to them. And so that's where you said, Corey, you have to own it. And Judith, you mentioned shoulda, woulda, coulda. I believe that there is a process for shoulda, woulda, coulda. That's how you learn, and that's how you grow. But you have that moment. You have that what should I have done? What could I have done? What would I do? And have the come to Jesus moment, self-evaluation, and then put it in the drawer, take the lesson from it, and move on. Don't carry the things that you did wrong. Don't carry the ways that you could have done something. Don't carry the ways you should have. Learn, acknowledge, do better next time, and understand that you cannot change a single soul on this planet. I cannot change the Vincennes, who I'm closer to than more than anybody on this whole planet. But I can change my reaction to what he says or does, and that's on us. And so we have that same ability with every interaction, client or personal. So, whoa.
Whoa.
Forget woo-woo. Whoa. All right. So I'm going to wrap this up. And again, thank both of you for sharing.
Thank you.
Yeah. And,
I'm going to go have a martini now.
Yeah. I mean, it's morning, but I might need it. I mean, honestly, interested to hear the feedback. I hope everybody takes it in the best light intended. The light that it's intended is for help, and for inspiration, and for helping you to understand that we all are in this boat as entrepreneurs, and we have lots of murky waters to go through. There's no judgment in this episode. There was not intended to be. There is no evaluation of anybody's abilities or not abilities, mental or otherwise. It's really just, it's our own private conversation. I mean, that's what it is. That's what we're doing here. We're helping each other through our experiences. All righty. Thank you so much for joining me. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, LuAnn.
See you at the bar.
Thank you so much for joining me again today. This podcast is a production of WindowWorks, your resource for custom window treatments and awnings. To learn how we can help you on your next interior design project, go to www.windowworks-nj.com. And if you're interested in working with me on your business, either through masterminds or one-on-one coaching, or you want to know how to get my book, The Making of a Well-Designed Business, or you just want to know what's going on in the podcast land and where I'm going to be, all of that is found at LuAnnNigara.com. Thank you so much. Have an excellent day.